Today I will give you 10 reasons, if you have a Crystal Super, why you should upgrade to the Micro-OLED optical engine, or if you don't own any Pimax VR headset, why you should aim for the Crystal Super Micro-OLED or the Dreamer. Let's begin with the most well-known factors, the contrast and the black levels. We all know that there's nothing that compares to OLED and Micro-OLED technology when looking for an image with the highest contrast ratio possible, nearly infinite contrast with a high dynamic range, bright whites and pure black levels. This is also the reason we all prefer OLED TVs today when watching movies and series. No more grayish image in the dark scene, and what's supposed to be black actually is presented as pitch black, also without crashing any details in the dark. Additionally, the bright details in a dark image are never too dim and do not create blooming or any light bleed. For example, when looking at tiny bright stars on a completely black night sky in Elite Dangerous, the stars are fully bright, and the same goes for the opposite. You can easily read thin and tiny black text on a completely white background without the text losing its visual intensity and clarity thanks to the extreme contrast levels. This is all possible because OLED panels have the ability to completely turn off each individual pixel, meanwhile, for instance, giving the pixel next to it the maximum possible luminance or brightness. And that creates a lifelike environment on screen, which you normally see with your eyes in real life, so to speak. That also explains why most people feel that the Micro-OLED image in VR is more natural, realistic and more convincing overall. While Pimax was one of the very few companies actually achieving the promise of adaptive local dimming on the previous QLED panels, which we find on the Super 50 ppd, the ultra-wide, the 57 ppd, as well as the Crystal Light and the original Crystal, we all know that QLED and local dimming has a few major downsides, and dark environments in VR are one of the biggest problems. I mean, your eyes can eventually adapt to a low contrast image and the poor black levels, but once you move over from QLED or LCD panels to OLED or Micro-OLED panels, there is no going back. It's a night and day difference, literally. And these top-of-the-line Sony Micro-OLED displays that Pimax decided to go for, having a resolution of 3840 by 3552 pixels per eye, are the best available on the market. And in my opinion, the choice of these panels was the most impactful decision that Pimax has made for years. Reason number 2 is the massive sweet spot with Micro-OLEDs and ConcaveView pancake lenses. The term sweet spot in VR normally refers to the specific area within the headset's lenses where the image is the clearest and sharpest. This is the factor that determines not only how sharp and crisp the image is in the center part of the VR view, but also the amount of edge-to-edge clarity we can get. The VR image using Sony Micro-OLEDs, especially paired with those custom ConcaveView lenses found on both the Super Micro-OLED and the Dreamer, gives a sharp and crisp view almost out to the edges. While the previous combination of aspheric glass lenses and QLED panels provided very good edge-to-edge clarity, I think the Micro-OLEDs and ConcaveView pancake lenses clearly takes the edge in terms of sharpness, clarity and readability, not only in the center spot but also in the peripheral view almost out to the very edges. Secondly, the Pimax ConcaveView lenses also achieve a big breakthrough when it comes to ease of use thanks to a larger eye box. A larger eye box makes the headset much more easier to put on and immediately get a clear picture. You no longer need to precisely align your eyes in a very specific lens position or the perfect sweet spot to achieve optimal image quality, which was the case with the aspheric glass lenses on the previous headsets. With ConcaveView pancake lenses, it kind of feels like a huge portion of the lens is a sweet spot, and we got a lot of positive feedback from many surprised users during our recent roadshow in the United States and Europe. Well, feel free to check out the previous video here on YouTube covering all uncut impressions from our roadshow. Anyway, a larger eye box is also crucial when doing active room scale VR gaming, when moving a lot, maybe exercising in a box VR, Beat Saber, or doing lots of quick moves in a fast-paced first-person shooter. You simply do not lose the sweet spot and its clarity even if the headset happens to move a little off-center from your eyes. The massive sweet spot on the new Pimax Micro-OLED headsets also become surprisingly obvious when recording through the lens videos and photos with any camera or a smartphone. Point the camera at the ConcaveView lens and you immediately get a super clear shot. Even if you move the camera around and off-center from the lens position, both clarity, sharpness and even the optical geometry stays perfect in shape. This might be one of the biggest breakthroughs for Pimax over the years. Next up, binocular overlap or stereo overlap. In VR, this refers to the portion of the virtual image that is simultaneously visible to both eyes. The more of the total rendered VR view that is seen with both eyes simultaneously and in 3D, the more comfortable the headset becomes for your eyes. And on top of that, it creates a more immersive and authentic VR experience, bringing you closer to what you see in real life. The amount or percentage of the overlap differs a lot between headsets. With the Pimax previous headsets with aspheric lenses and QLED panels, the maximum achievable overlap was a bit limited. Now, using ConcaveView lenses, these are magnifying the image from a much smaller micro-OLED panels, making it possible to calibrate a binocular overlap reaching depth max, a term that stands for the maximum possible overlap in VR, which is somewhere around 95% of the combined total rendered VR view. 100% overlap is not even possible in VR, and that is due to the fact we're rendering two different images, one per eye, from different perspectives and with a separation in between. This means between 92 and 95% overlap is as good as it gets in VR, and that is what these ConcaveView lenses can achieve on the Super Micro-OLED and the Dream Air. When reaching depth max, only maybe 3 to 4% of the view on the left and the right edge in VR is not in 3D. This was never possible with the previous Pimax lenses and panels, and this allows the new Micro-OLED headsets to deliver a more immersive VR experience and a better eye comfort. A huge factor for a lot of people out there. As number 4, I picked lack of Mura and minimal chromatic aberration. First off, Mura refers to a visual artifact where displays have an inconsistent brightness or color across the screen. It is often perceived as a grainy or a cloudy pattern overlaid on the image, almost like looking through a dirty window, especially seen when looking at the bright sky or clouds in VR. This has been kind of a problem for some people with the QLED and LCD panels in general, and the previous Pimax Crystal, the Crystal Light and the Crystal Super optical engines were no exception. Mura was just there, and it's not a huge problem for everyone, but many people get distracted by it. Here on the Super Micro-OLED optical engine, as well as the Dream Air of course, Mura is completely gone. Image is super clean, no signs of grainy or cloudy patterns at all, and literally zero Mura. And that is a game changer, specifically for flight simmers spending most of the time airborne with the sky and the clouds always visible, covering a huge portion of the VR view when flying. Secondly, chromatic aberration or CA is minimal with the ConcaveView lenses and the Micro-OLED. In case you don't know, chromatic aberration is an optical distortion where the headset's lenses fail to focus or project all colors of light to the exact same point. This failure results in noticeable colored fringes, often red, green or blue outlines around the edges of objects and text, especially towards peripheral view. With the Pimax new lineup of headsets featuring Micro-OLED panels and ConcaveView pancake lenses, this is barely an issue anymore. Only minimal CA or chromatic aberration may still be seen in the far peripheral view, but it's miles better than we got used to with aspheric lenses and all previous headsets from Pimax and most other brands. Number 5. Another huge factor is that the micro-OLED headsets clearly produce less aliasing in the VR view. Aliasing refers to a visual distortion where diagonal lines and curves appear as jagged or stair-stepped. We call it jagged edges or jaggies. With DreamAir and Super Micro-OLED, you simply perceive less jagged edges or less aliasing no matter what you play in VR. That's at least my impression. The official measured pixel per degree value is 53 ppd on both the Super Micro-OLED and the DreamAir, but apart from the slightly higher ppd than the Super 50 ppd produces, there is clearly another reason why Micro-OLED image shows less aliasing overall, and that is the panel's pixel fill factor or fill rate. The pixels and the subpixels are physically closer to each other with less of a gap in between each pixel and subpixel. This creates a more natural and stable image without distracting jaggies in games and almost no shimmery edges at all. This becomes very obvious in VR flight simulators when looking at far distance or when looking at the cockpit gauges, the panels and all its lines. This is just another game changer for flight simmers and also casual VR gamers or users doing a lot of desktop work in VR. Let's talk about performance, because here is a fact that me and many others have already proven the past months. With the new Pimax lineup of the Micro-OLED headsets, no matter what you play in VR, you get a significant performance boost. You get all between 20 to 50% or even more frame rate in games and simulators compared to the Crystal Super 50 ppd and the ultra-wide module. This sounds crazy considering both have very similar panel resolution, but it all makes sense when you understand the reasoning. The combination of micro-OLED panels and ConcaveView pancake lenses allow for a much more optically correct VR image out of the box before even applying the distortion correction algorithms. This means much less distortion correction is required and therefore a considerably lower amount of additional rendered pixels needs to be processed per eye before it's sent to the headset. So at native or default optimal settings, having Pimax Play image quality set to 1.0, the render pipeline renders roughly 5000 by 4000 pixels per eye or something on the two Micro-OLED headsets, instead of around 6200 by 6200 pixels per eye on the Super 50 ppd optical engine. That's nearly 50% less pixels rendered in total, which obviously explains the performance boost. And remember, despite the lower base resolution rendered here, the Super Micro-OLED and the DreamAir will give you a VR view that is sharper overall, looking higher resolution and with less visible jagged edges. Oh, and check out the previous videos on Pimax YouTube channel with more in-depth performance comparisons between all the Crystal Super optical engines. I think this factor alone is enough for most people to consider the Micro-OLED upgrade from Pimax. Micro-OLED displays offer smoother experience in games and fast-moving content overall compared to the QLED and LCDs. And that is proven. This is due to a combination of low persistence and near instantaneous pixel response times. Micro-OLED pixels can turn off and on almost instantly, typically under 0.1 millisecond. This virtually eliminates the display's motion blur artifact some people can see on LCD and QLED. Thanks to the low persistence, the Micro-OLEDs improves the perceived motion clarity in VR, and it also makes it feel smoother and snappier in fast-paced VR. This is noticeable especially when your VR view is moving fast, either when you quickly move your head from side to side or fly an airplane or race a track. And what I've personally noticed the past 2 months or so with the Super Micro-OLED and DreamAir is that the image feels smoother even when the frame rate drops. For instance, when running at around 80 to 85 frames per second in the 90 Hz mode, Although not maxing out the frame rate, the image does feel smoother with less stutters on the micro-OLED displays. This became very obvious to me when I was doing Assetto Corsa Rally in 72Hz mode and had the frame rate jumping between 65 and 72 frames per second. I never felt the frame loss really, which I usually do. Also, while I'm personally sensitive to a low refresh rate flicker, like when running the 72Hz mode on the QLED and LCD panels headsets, here with the micro-OLEDs in 72Hz, I really cannot see or feel the flicker or the fact that the refresh rate is indeed lower than my mostly preferred 90Hz. Now, as previously mentioned when talking performance, the micro-OLED distortion correction profiles are not as aggressive with the ConcaveView pancake lenses compared to the QLED and aspheric lenses. This also means we can achieve better and more corrected distortion profiles, giving us a more proper VR view with micro-OLEDs in terms of correct geometry, the world scale, the perspective, and other factors. I'm not saying the previous Pimax headset had bad distortion profiles. In fact, the Super 50 PPD is at this point well known for having an exceptional distortion profile with basically no edge warping and no geometrical distortions visible at all. But based on what I see in the new Pimax Micro-OLED headsets and what has been achieved so far, I think we are now getting very close from a perfect distortion-free image in a VR headset. Super impressive if you ask me. On number 9, I consider the new headset's comfort and weight being a valid factor. Both the pancake lenses and the panels are smaller and considerably more lightweight than the QLEDs and those heavy aspheric glass lenses from the Crystal, Crystal Light and the Crystal Super. Dreamer is a small form factor headset which obviously will be ultra light and a perfect device for casual VR gamers doing active room scales, shooters, or even VR workout. But even when we talk about the Super Micro-OLED module, which is almost half the weight of the 50 PPD optical engine, there's clearly an improvement in overall comfort. A lighter headset will automatically feel less front heavy, especially when correctly balanced with the strap. It's maybe not a game changer in terms of comfort going from the Super 50 PPD to the Super Micro-OLED, but I think it's definitely an important factor to count in among the top 10 reasons for an upgrade. Lastly, as a 10th valid reason for a potential micro-OLED upgrade, I'm going to take the risk and claim the quality consistency, especially regarding the Sony micro-OLED displays, is a huge factor to count in. I simply believe that we're about to experience significantly less issues with the micro-OLED panels in terms of image consistency across produced batches, possible dead pixel issues, or other panel-related flaws. The quality control is extremely high on these panels from Sony. This obviously adds to the total cost of the headset, but in my opinion, quality consistency and quality control are both extremely important. And I'll tell you, since I'm working with Pimax and I do see everything what's happening behind the curtains, normally when testing and evaluating in-house samples of Pimax headsets yet to be released, so-called prototypes or pre-production units, I have many times seen various panel issues across the line of pre-production sample iterations. All sorts of early stage issues actually, especially before we went final production, sometimes even after. Now with the Super Micro-OLED and the Dreamer samples I've been testing ever since early summer actually, I have till this day not seen even one dead pixel, not a faulty panel, no image anomalies or issues whatsoever, or actually anything that can be related or blamed on the Sony Micro-OLED displays. And this, combined with all the other factors I just mentioned in my top 10 list, gives me very high confidence and trust in the Micro-OLED generation of Pimax headsets. And what do you think about all this? Are you considering an upgrade? Are you going for the Dreamer or the Super Micro-OLED? Let us know in the comments. That's all I have for today. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.